Okay, I'm just trying to shut my phone off.
Can you just move down a couple seats?
Okay, thank Rabbi Feder, Rabbi Wilkes, for inviting me.
Oh, it's open. You locked?
It's open.
Oh, okay. You should hold on to it.
The rabbis asked me to talk about marriage and relationships, and I know you guys are the parents of the Hebrew school children. How old are your kids that are coming to this school?
10.
10?
7.
11 and 14.
11. Okay, so preteens and teens, and kids are becoming teenagers much younger. Your parents have said to me they think it's starting at around 3 or 4. Especially the preteen eye roll thing is starting as young as newborns.
The eye roll.
Newborns. The girls are really good at doing that. It seems to be genetic. It's just some, that eye roll thing. And it used to be accompanied by the word whatever, but they've dropped the whatever. Just the eye roll is good enough to let all parents know that anything you have to say really doesn't matter to me because I know better. So that's preteens, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I do want to talk about marriage, and one of the interesting things about speaking to parents about marriage, parents of kids that you're raising, family, is that I've come to understand over the years that probably one of the most important things we could do for our children is to work on our marriages. And whenever I do a series of parenting classes, I will devote at least one class to what you could do to make your marriage a happier place. And I'll always remember, I told a little story over the weekend, and it reminded me again at how powerful the story was. I was maybe 6 years old when the story took place, and I was walking with my parents. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I have this memory of a 6-year-old walking on a Saturday afternoon, on a Shabbos afternoon with my parents to visit our cousins. And I grew up with just my sister and I, with just 2 kids in the family, and my parents were survivors, Holocaust survivors, and so family was really, if you had cousins, then you were close to them, especially if you lived, not far from. So it just had this memory of walking down the street of Brooklyn, and on the way to visit our cousins, and I was kind of happy about that. I was also kind of happy that my sister, who's 5 years older than me, was not with us, so I was getting all the attention. I have that memory also. This memory is maybe one of my earliest memories, because it goes back 50 years. So we're walking down the street, and I'm walking between my parents. I'm holding my mother's hand in my right hand, I'm holding my dad's hand in my left hand, and really just kind of feeling good. I like these cousins, and I'm looking forward to it. My sister's not around, so nobody's grabbing attention. I'm in the middle between my parents, and then all of a sudden, without even realizing why, not even fully conscious, as a 6-year-old, I have this memory, and I have this image in my head of, as we're walking, holding my mom's hand in one hand, my dad's hand in the other, putting their hands together, and then kind of scooting out from the middle. I'm sure some of you had this experience with your children. My kids have done it to us over the years. So just putting their hands together and then catching this look that went from my mother to my father as, I did that, scooted out, and then, held on to one of their hands. I don't remember who I went to. Catching the look, I think, on my mother's face and the smile that passed between them. And I remember, even as a little boy, feeling a sense of security inside. I didn't know the word security, but feeling good inside. That was that feeling. So, it's just like one of the gifts we can give our children is to have a good marriage. Now, I want to make it very clear. I don't know anybody's history here. I don't know if there are. I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that if somebody, sometimes divorce is absolutely necessary. And if somebody is divorced, it doesn't mean those kids are doomed. God forbid. It's just not true, and the research is just not true. What is perhaps true is the damage that is done to children in a bad divorce, meaning like when the parents continue to trash each other even after the divorce, and then trying to put the kids in the middle. That's deadly. That is very deadly. But the research has shown that even children divorced, can be raised healthy and happy as long as the parents are mensches, meaning continue to will be supportive of each other, will co-parent together, and will support each other. And I've met families, it's really quite impressive, of divorced families where the parents will back each other when the child is trying to create a wedge. And that's probably the healthiest thing. Although somebody said to me, well, if they're that healthy, then maybe they wouldn't have gotten divorced in the first place. And I'll say to them, it's not true. Because sometimes the marriages don't work, but the divorces can work. So having said that, it's still clear that if you're in a marriage, one of the best things you can do for your kids is to work on your marriage, to spend time on it, to pay attention to it, to really have a consciousness of what are we doing, what are each of us doing to make the other feel loved, what are each of us doing to make the other feel appreciated, or to show that I'm grateful, or to show that I'm happy with you. These are messages that we need to send to our spouses, and the truth is we need to send these same exact messages to each of our children. What have I shown? What have I done this week to show my son or my daughter that I'm happy with them? That they're important to me, that they matter a whole lot, and that their feelings count. It's just, I can't say enough about the opportunities that we have as parents and the opportunities that we have as spouses to be able to spread the joy, so to speak, but also the danger of what happens when we fight. Tell me some of the things that go wrong when a couple gets into an argument. Where do we cross lines? Where do we do damage?
Self-esteem.
Self-esteem you're talking about to the child or to each other?
Both.
Okay, so the damage to the self-esteem of whoever it is we are angry with. What else?
Acceptance of the negative.
Meaning?
If one parent is yelling or demeaning the other parent, then the child may see that as, I guess that's normal, and then that would go on, and
Excellent.
They would do it in their future.
Excellent. So, as we know, as all parents know, that probably 90% of what parenting is modeling. So our kids, I'll tell you a story that you'll get a kick out of. I was maybe in practice, now I'm in practice a little bit over 20 years as a psychologist, and I was maybe in practice maybe 3 years or something by then when this couple walks in and they have this, I think 4 or 5-year-old little boy, a lot of energy, looked like, ADHD, but, kind of bouncing off the walls, and they said they want to leave him with me, and I said, what do you mean? and they said, well, the dad said forever, and the mom said just for the session. We want you to have a session with him. And I said, well, tell me what you're talking, like what's going on. I didn't know what it was about. They said they were having family issues, and they came in for their first session. They said, well, they were in the I work in the community, in the Jewish community, so they were in the kosher pizza place the night before, Saturday night. So this was a Sunday morning appointment. And I think it's 5-year-old little boy. And mom was there with her son in the pizza place, and it was late, it was time to go, so she turns to him and we'll call him Sam. And she said, Sam, it's time to go. He said, no, I don't want to go, I'm still eating, or I'm still, there are a lot of kids here still, I don't want to go. She said, no, we have to go, and they get into this conflict a little bit. So he gets up, he stands up on the pizza, on the table in the pizza place in front of many people in the Jewish community, and then he says, I'm not going anywhere with you, and then word that begins with B. So they tell me this in front of him, and he's kind of looking sheepish on the ground, and I say, Sam, come with me. I take it out into the waiting room and I have some toys out there, and I'll make sure the door is locked, that he's safe, and I Then I come back in, I close the door, and I turn to them and I say, 5-year-old boys don't know that word. And they certainly don't know how to use it as well as he used it. He used it, the context was correct, he used it exactly as it should have been used. So that's why I said it, that one sentence. 5-year-old boys don't know that word. And then I said, and certainly not the way he used it. And then I was quiet, and we waited. And I waited, and they waited until Dad turned purple, and then said, well, you know, we fight a lot, and that is a word that he might have heard from me. So I said, listen to me, Sam's playing out in the other room. Sam's a good kid. He's a good boy. He learns from his parents. He has parents that need a lot of help. So modeling is everything. Modeling is everything. What do our kids see? And our kids will often create the kind of marriages that they see in their own home. Okay, so if that's a good marriage, then that's great. And if it's not such a good marriage, and most marriages are imperfect, and that's okay, then that child, that adult child, will need to struggle on some of those things that he saw in his own home. But, you know, kids need to see their parents arguing in healthy ways. You know, it's not particularly healthy to never argue. It doesn't, it's not, you know, it's fantasy. I remember my sister had like a best friend who was married for a few years, and we used to talk about their marriage, meaning that like they seemed so happy, they would go dancing together, and they're just always complimenting, never fighting, da, 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 and then out of the blue, maybe after a few years, they just got divorced. And like, you know, like we were like wondering about that, as you know, and then she spoke to her friend, and she said, well, there was no real, you know, it wasn't real marriage, it was fake. You know, he smiled, I smiled, we smiled, but whenever we were upset about something, we swallowed it. They didn't know how to fight. Probably one of the most important characteristics of a healthy marriage is healthy fighting. It's not no fighting, it's healthy fighting. Because everybody fights, everybody argues. It's normal. You married people with brains in their heads, everybody's going to have an opinion. You're going to feel strongly about it. The key is, how do we voice our opinions? You know, and sometimes we're voicing our opinions in the way we saw our parents voice their opinions. Now we need to think, you know, in our marriage, is that a good model? Do we want the marriage that our parents had? If the answer to that is yes, then go for it. If the answer to that is no, then we need to do something differently. You know, if not, the pattern goes on and on. Abusive marriages lead to abusive marriages. Unhealthy marriages lead to unhealthy marriages. Healthy marriages often lead to healthy marriages. So you give your children a gift, not only is it good parenting because it gives the children a sense of security to see happy parents who are happy with each other. You know, if they catch mommy and daddy, you know, hugging or holding hands or smiling or laughing with each other, that's good parenting. They shouldn't catch you doing too many inappropriate, you know. So be careful about what they catch you doing. So, you know, loving, yes, the sexual, nah. So, like, figure that out. A hug is loving. It's not gonna, you know, give them nightmares. It's not gonna, it's not gonna, like, you know, make them want to throw up. So, it's really important that you then, but for kids to see parents being affectionate and loving and saying nice things and laughing together and joking and that the atmosphere in the home is, while imperfect, and sometimes mom and dad will argue, and sometimes even argue strongly, and sometimes they'll be even so mad at each other maybe they won't even talk for a few hours, not a few days, but like for a few hours, and then they even get the gift of being able to watch dad or mom apologize to the other. That's gold. You understand? It's not no fighting, it's fighting and arguing, but arguing with as a mensch, arguing with you know, with dignity, arguing with being careful of the dignity of the other, the importance of the dignity of the other, and we have to be so careful of that with our children too. If we were raised in a generation where the parents, you know, when I was a little kid, my parents never said this, but I had friends whose parents said this, and it kind of freaked me out. Do you remember that old expression? Most of you are not old enough for this, but maybe you read about it or you saw it on a rerun. Kids should be seen and not heard. What is that? Kids really weren't considered people at one time. You know, and I remember one of my favorite rabbis ever would speak at teachers' conventions. His name was Rabbi Palm, and he was such a good-hearted man. And he used to say, kids are people, kids are people. And he would tell teachers and principals, speak in front of principals and in front of parents, and he would say in Yiddish, but he would say, it's not okay to humiliate a child. Over and over again, it's against the Torah, it is against Judaism to humiliate a child. To embarrass your child in front of their friends is not cool. And it's not a Jewish idea. You know, and the idea of being careful of the dignity of each of our children, and then to model that in terms of being careful of the dignity of the one who my kids feel I love, or know that I love, and then I'm not careful of that. I'll always remember, and it haunts me, the 14-year-old girl that came in my office and literally sobbed for half the session. And then saying, you know, I never said this to anybody, and I assumed that she would tell me some kind of terrible, you know, physical sexual abuse or something, because that was what her sobs sounded like to me. And she didn't say that. And it was just one sentence that her mother had said to her 3 years before that she couldn't get past. And the sentence was when her mother, in a fit of rage, said to her, "I'm sorry I ever had you." And she said that was haunting her. Was haunting her. So and then when I spoke to the mother about it privately, not in front of the daughter, when I spoke to the mother about it afterwards, she said, I said, you know, your daughter is still haunted by the thing you said 3 years ago. And she said, what did I say? And I told her, and she said, I don't even remember saying that. And then she said something like, I'm not saying that she's not telling the truth. My daughter doesn't lie. I probably did say that if she said that I said that. But I grew up in a house where when you were in a fight, anything goes. You said whatever you said. You know, my parents said horrible things to each other, and then they made up, you know, whenever they made up. So when horrible things were said to me, and my brother said horrible things to me, and I said horrible things to him, and that's what we did in a fight. So I don't know what her problem is. Like, she saw it as a weakness on her daughter, as opposed to not understanding that children are going to believe their parents. And they're not going to just see it as something said in rage. You know, so and I said, you understand that for the last 3 years, your daughter, you don't even remember saying it, and your daughter has been living that sentence every day for the last 3 years. Do you get it? And that shook her up, and she said, what can I do? I said, you're going to have to prove to her by the way you treat her that that was just a stupid thing that you said, and it wasn't real. It was something said in anger, but it's not really true. You're going to have to prove the apology. You're going to have to say I'm sorry, and then you're going to have to live the apology. Because saying I'm sorry for such a horrible thing is not enough. It's not enough. You know, so you know, children are capable of forgiveness. And spouses are capable of forgiveness, but we need to say the I'm sorry. Give me an example of a terrible I'm sorry. Like an I'm sorry that won't do much repair.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
Okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. My number one thing is, I'm sorry I said that. I didn't realize you were so sensitive. Right, so translation, if you weren't such a baby, you wouldn't have gotten hurt, so I'm going to apologize now because you are such a freaking baby. That's the translation of that sentence. You ever get an apology like that where you actually feel worse after it's said, like, oh, maybe you should have apologized, you know? Okay, the only kind of apology that can do some repair work has two conditions. Number one, there's no but in the sentence. Not a drop. It's just, I'm sorry I said that. I know that was hurtful. I'm going to try really never to do that again. No excuses, no rationalizations, no you deserved it, no, nothing that implies you deserved it, nothing like that. It's not an apology if there's a baggage attached to it that continues to hurt the person. Okay, that's A. B, the other part of the apology is was taught to me also by children, by teenagers, who said to me, you told my father to apologize, when he yells at me in that way, and I'm angry at you for telling him to do that. I said, why? She said, because not only does he continue to yell at me that way, but now he's a liar because he apologizes. So just, it's all BS. He shouldn't apologize. He's lying. I know he's going to do the same thing tomorrow. So an apology that we don't live is worse than no apology at all. I'm not saying don't apologize. I'm saying live the apology. Prove it. So an apology that, and again, if the crime or the hurtful incident takes place, often, I'm sorry is almost like obscene. It's like, what are you doing? He's saying you apologize. I know you're going to do it within the next few days. And women have said this to me about their husbands, and occasionally men have said this to me about their wives, but lots of children have said this to me about about either of their parents. Because it's like, so don't teach my parents to apologize if you're not teaching them how to behave in the first place. Is what especially teenage girls are especially sophisticated who get the whole picture, and will say to me, in the only way a teenage girl could do, how stupid are you? why are you teaching them to do something that's actually more hurtful? Okay, so apologies, and I'm gonna say a cryptic sentence, and you tell me what I mean. I think one of the most important things qualities that needs to be there in a marriage is for each of the couple, both the husband and the wife, have the quality of courage. What do I mean by that? Why do I feel very strongly that you need to be courageous to help create a happy, healthy marriage? The courage to what?
Show your weaknesses.
So number one, the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to show your weaknesses. Excellent. What else?
Courage to apologize when you're wrong.
The courage to apologize when you're wrong.
And change. Not just to apologize, but to be able to amend your behavior.
Excellent.
Courage to do the right thing in a very difficult way.
In a way, right. To do the right thing. Meaning, because what typically happens with a couple is they'll get into this verbal battle, and then now there's egos involved, and each one has to prove the other one wrong. As a result, what will happen, and especially it depends on how we grew up, and I'll say sometimes all the time, I'll be working with a couple, let's say in their 40s, right? And they'll be arguing right in front of me. They'll get into it because I want them to do that. I'll get into it right in front of me, and then I'll say, I can't tell even how old you are, because it feels like third graders arguing. And it's like so, and sometimes they'll get a little bit offended, but mostly they'll just sheepishly smile and say, yeah, I know. Mostly they'll get it, but usually they'll say, yeah, she's such a third grader, she's such an eighth grader. They'll each blame the other one for that falling apart, so to speak, losing their adulthood. But sometimes it's scarier. I'll have a woman in her 30s or 40s arguing with her teenager in front of me, and I can't tell who the parent is and who the child is. And I'm not going to say to them, because I don't want to embarrass the mother in front of the child. I also don't want to give ammunition for the child. But I'll talk to the mother alone, and I'd say exactly those words. I couldn't tell who the child was, and I couldn't tell who the parent was. Something's wrong if we're still that age. Something's off. That means we're still stuck in that, sometimes we emotionally get stuck at certain ages. Somebody that's a victim of abuse, especially sexual abuse, will sometimes get stuck at the age that happened. That needs some serious therapy to be able to move beyond that. And when people fight, especially if they grew up in a home where there was lots of unhealthy fighting, they can sometimes get stuck in that traumatic zone of like deer in the headlights kind of thing. I don't know how to do this in a healthy way. So the courage to do the right thing means I'm just so angry. I'll often, we'll often talk about the concept of playground rules. Most of us learned how to fight. You know that line, everything I needed to know in life I learned in kindergarten? Okay, so the truth is, we learn a lot in grammar school, but sometimes we learn a lot of unhealthy things and we get stuck there. So when we came home and we say that, Joey kicked sand in my face in the sandbox, Dad will say, go back tomorrow and you be sure to bury Joey in the sandbox. That's what Dad will say. And I do a lot of work with bullies and victims of bullies and schools with trying to create healthy and safe environments in their school. And one of the things that that I'll teach is this idea of generating an atmosphere in the classroom of where everybody feels safe. Okay? But the idea of the playground rules is, if you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. I don't know if you remember, some of you maybe are perhaps old enough to remember Leave It to Beaver, that show. So Beaver came home from school and he was being bullied. So how did they take care of the bullying problem back then? And it's funny because people have said to me, well, that way worked better than what we're doing, but it is what Wally taught Beaver how to box. And said, tomorrow when the bully comes over you and says something, as soon as he opens his mouth, you punch him in the face. And Beaver did that, happy ending. That was the story. That was TV in the 1960s. Although, probably the most popular show that I grew up with and that we watched as a family every night, I Love Lucy. And which was a wonderful, wonderful show until you realize, Ricky used to spank Lucy on the show sometimes. How whacked out was that? How freaky, unhealthy, strange, what was creepy was that? Babalu was spanking, Lucy. That was strange, very strange. But so some of that innocent TV back then, although I always look back, I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home. My parents had separate beds. Right? And so did Ricky and Lucy. So it's just, it wasn't strange at all. Back then, it was like we were so clean in our society. Do you realize growing up, the I Love Lucy generation, you never saw them in the same bed. You never saw her not fully dressed. It's just like in terms of what the permissiveness of what we see on regular TV, separate from what is online and on YouTube and everywhere else, the education that our kids are getting and the images that they carry around with them. And really the porn addictions that are growing from the whole internet is really a much bigger struggle than we had to deal with back then. So like a weird scene with Ricky and Lucy one time was nothing compared to what our kids see on regular TV now. And then throw in the internet. Okay, but the idea of teaching children to defend themselves is not a bad idea, while at the same time we don't want to what happens was Beaver was in danger. If there was a real Beaver, he was in danger of turning into a bully himself. That's why we don't do that. Because if you teach a kid how to beat up the bully, then those kids will sometimes take it to the next step and say, hey, I enjoy this power. I know how to box, I know. So there's danger in that. The other danger is if you beat up the bully's going to come back and beat you even more. So it's like, it's not necessarily a healthy way of being, so anyway, back to in terms of what do our kids see? Do our kids see bullies in the house? And the bully doesn't have to be the man. I've worked with many families where the bully is the woman. It's not going to be a physical bullying, but it'll usually, but it'll be it could be a verbal bullying. And we know, I remember, when I was in graduate school, they used to say most bullies are male, but that's not true of school-age children. Anyone that has been bullied by a mean girl knows that mean girls could be quite nasty. And the words, as we know, as many of the nursery rhymes have lied to us, one of the biggest lies of nursery rhymes is, that's right, right, hands will never harm me, right?
Which is the opposite.
It's such a lie. It's such a lie. It's a total lie. And I remember I was driving in New York City once, and a news report came on about a horrific story that had just taken place about a woman that was killed in her own apartment. Somebody came to the house and had beaten this woman and killed her. And then the reporter says, almost like an afterthought, her children were there. when she got killed, when she was killed, when she was beaten and killed. And then he said, but the children were unharmed. And I remember thinking, and this is my field, but I remember thinking, anybody with a brain in their head, children were unharmed, they would have been less harmed if the guy would have beaten them unconscious first and then killed their mother. Do you understand? If he had beaten them with the bat first, and they would not have witnessed the death and the killing of their mother, that would have been less harmful. But I guess even then, and this wasn't that many years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago, where there was emotional pain didn't seem to get the same credibility as physical pain. And we know, anybody with common sense knows that emotional pain is usually more painful than physical pain. None of it is good. None of it is good. And being beaten physically often has emotional damage also. You know, when a parent loses it and abuses a child physically, that damages the child emotionally, damages the psyche also. But the idea of the importance of emotional pain. Okay, so courage to do the right thing, because I don't want to do the right thing. It means I don't want to admit that I was wrong. I don't want to say, and courage means I'm going to, and it's really the same thing, it's allowing myself to be vulnerable. It's admitting that I did something wrong, admitting I have a weakness, admitting maybe I have an anger issue, and admitting that maybe I need to get professional help for it. To do something, that's going to be part of my commitment to a loving marriage, that if I end up crossing lines, and I'm saying this both for men or women, I will do something about it. I will either work it on my own, and then you will gauge my progress, or if that's not good enough, I will get professional help. I will go for 4 sessions, I will go for 6 sessions, I maybe will go for 3 years. Nobody should go as long as Woody Allen went.
Well, you saw
I think
the
it was in
story
therapy
that,
for
you
close
saw
to
the story
40.
that just came out.
No, I didn't.
Oh, that his daughter is claiming that he sexually abused her.
Well, we all knew that.
Right.
You know, that was an old
Right.
story. You're talking about the adopted.
There's something new that just came out yesterday.
Yeah,
in New
yeah.
York.
But 1 second, the one he eventually married.
No,
No,
the other one.
Dylan.
Oh,
And
Dylan
that
Farrow.
Dylan
okay.
and that made
Thanks
a
for
watch.
sharing the news with me. I appreciate that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
You're such a
that just broke
whack
yesterday.
So she's accusing him of sexual abuse.
And that Diane Keaton,
Cri-
who just, or not, was that her name?
Diane Keaton.
Whoever just glorified him at the
Yeah.
Grammys, that
Oh.
she knew all along what had been going on, and how could she get up there and talk about how amazing he was.
Oh my gosh. This just came out today.
Yesterday.
Okay. All right. So courage. Courage. The courage to be able to be vulnerable, the courage to say I'm sorry. I'm going to add one other courage that is really important in a healthy marriage. Really, really important. The courage not only to say I'm sorry, but the courage to ask for an apology. Meaning, you said something to me, you've hurt me. Okay, so we have to be careful here, because not everything that is hurtful do we have to make an issue out of. We have to, the only person to decide whether I should make an issue out of this thing is the person themselves. In other words, if I'm the one that's hurt, I have to decide, can I let this go or not? And then I have to be honest with myself. And just because my older sister would be able to let this go, doesn't mean I can let it go. I have to know whether I can let it go. I was sitting in a restaurant once, and at the next table there was a man yelling at his wife loud enough for at least 3 or 4 tables to hear. That's not a let go kind of situation. You know, you embarrass me in front of other people. And so probably the yardstick, so to speak, for deciding whether I have to say something, because I don't have to say every silly thing that happens between. I don't have to make an issue. I can let things go. I'm not perfect. He's not perfect. I'm not perfect. She's not perfect. We can let things go sometimes. We don't have to say something. But we can only let it go if we could really let it go. Because what happens is people err the other way. They let it go, they let it go. What they're really doing is swallowing, swallowing, swallowing. And then it comes out as an explosion. 2 things will happen if I just swallow, swallow, swallow. Either it'll come out as an explosion or a divorce. Right? Like what's called a cold divorce. We never fight, we never fight, we never fight, we never fight. Let's get divorced. I hate your guts. Yeah. Why? Because every time I get demeaned, a little bit of the marriage dies. A little bit of the love takes a hit. A little bit of that love. And if it's like a big demeaning, meaning like I was really, to me, my dignity was like trashed. I was hit, or I was made fun of in front of the children, or I was the butt of a joke, or something that's important to me was made fun of. That has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed in a strong, not aggressive, but assertive manner. One of the keys of any healthy relationship is to know the difference between the definition of the words assertive versus aggressive. What's the difference?
I versus you.
Using I words, like this is how I felt. What else? Like I means I was hurt, you means
Right,
you're
not
such a
you're
jerk.
hurting me.
Or you're
Right.
hurting me, right? You're attacking me. Okay, what else? Well, in definitions, what's the difference? Before even coming up with
Well,
examples.
assertive is standing up for yourself, and
Yeah.
aggressive is attacking somebody.
Right,
Exactly.
that's right. Right. Aggressive is drawing blood, meaning not necessarily, I don't even mean that necessarily literally, but either literally, but drawing, meaning I'm trying to hurt you. Playground politics, you hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you back. As opposed to, what I'll encourage couples to do is to learn just to say one word sometimes. Now I'm gonna attack you back. I don't wanna, because what typically happens with a couple who are really not, haven't learned how to healthy fight is like a poker game. Is you'll say something hurtful to me, I'll see you and then I'll raise you. Okay, so now we're
All
off.
in.
Well,
Yeah.
that's right, I'm all in. So, but typically it's that what we're doing, so we're escalating. Now you hurt me, now I'm gonna hurt you. Before we were talking about an argument about the kids, now I'm gonna say to you, dear, I noticed you put on a few pounds lately. And then she'll say back, I noticed you don't have any hair on your head anymore. Which is a weapon that my wife could use, but she's so sweet she doesn't use. Okay, so we see, we raise, we see, we raise. That's going down a path that's terrible. What we need to do is somebody raised, over here, I need to still stay here. And each of you are responsible for that. Meaning, what I'm gonna say though is I'm gonna say ouch. I'm not gonna say ouch you, what that 5-year-old boy said. I'm not gonna say ouch you, I can't believe you did it, and then whole story. And not only that, you're like that, and your mother's like that too. I'm not doing that. I'm not going down there. I'm not going to insult people you love. One of the most hurtful things that you could do is insult, is to hurt a loved person of your spouse. We have to be so careful with that. Not only am I careful of you, I'm careful of the people you love, even if I don't love them. That's what it means. If I love you, I'm going to be careful. I'm not going to say mean things about your mom, your dad, or your brother, or your best friend. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be careful of your own dignity and all the people in your life who you care about. So typically, so the word that I encourage people to say is ouch. Ouch. Meaning you hurt, that hurt. Now, ouch often doesn't work enough, but ouch is that really hurt. And then if necessary, if like it happens again or something like that, to say, it's not okay. It's not okay for you to do that. It's not okay for you to embarrass me in front of other people. It's not okay for you to yell at me. It's not okay for you to stand too close to me. You're intimidating me now. It's not okay to use your physical power in a way that's scary for me. It's not okay for you to scare me. It's not okay for you to treat me not like I should be treated, which is with the holiness of what it means to be a human being. That we have to understand, we have to live our lives in marriage of your dignity is important to me. Your feelings are important to me. I'll end with this and then take questions. Is, each of us as a couple has to ask, I said this before, but I'll end with it as well, is what did I do today to show the other that they matter to me? That their feelings are important to me? That what did I do this week to show that she is loved, to show her that she is loved, to show him that he is loved and appreciated, to appreciate the stuff, the extra stuff that they do. Do I voice that appreciation? So I had in mind to print out copies of a, poem/article I wrote. So I'll ask you to just go to it online if you're interested. And I have something on parenting, and it's called A Father's or A Parent's Promises, and there's another one called A I write it from a male perspective, so a husband's promises, but it's equally, the wife could read it also. And it's a whole bunch of like affirmations, statements about, you know, how much you matter to me. And you could just Google, you know, either Google me or just Google that title, Husband's Promises. Or I think H.com has a Husband's Promises on it. I think they still kept it on there.
AISH.
AISH.com, right? They have it. They have some of my stuff on there. There's some video, right. Or you could Google me, and I have like recordings online. I don't have like a website, but I'm on there from different, you know, classes that I've given. Maybe this will be online. Right. I know. Does you guys have a website?
Mhm.
Okay, so maybe you could put it up there for parents that want to see it again or whatever. Okay, questions, comments? Yes?
Am I allowed to
Yeah.
share? Okay. I don't really want this part in the video, no.
Sure. Harry,
Okay.
can you turn up the video?
Right, we don't have to get the questions on